Jody Shields says, haven't had a show all year. It's about time. Good afternoon from San Francisco. Welcome to our first show of the year, show number 484.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year indeed for Tuesday, the 4th of January, 2022. I'm your host, Tom Ehman. And of course, if I put our titles up, you can see that we are once again live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. We've had a little excitement outside here in the last few days. We'll tell you about. Julia?
Sir.
Happy New Year. I trust you're well.
I am. Thank you.
Any hot tips?
No, not really.
Got a lot of folks on here already, and we want to wish them all, again, a very warm welcome and a Happy New Year. It's 2022, as you all well and truly know. And around the world, we'll start with the first fireworks that we saw, other than, you know, there's the odd fireworks just east of Auckland at one of the islands, I guess, for New Year's celebrations. This was Auckland, New Year's Eve. The first capital city that celebrates New Year's, to the best of my knowledge. Been there for that. Really subdued this year. Nice light show on the bridge.
Is it Seattle?
Well, Seattle's in our time zone. Seattle's among the last with us. Honolulu is the last big one, I think. But Auckland is the first capital city. Followed a couple hours later by Sydney. Sky Tower all nicely lit up. Look at the light show on the bridge.
Yeah, it's nice. That's new.
Bridge. Auckland is now, okay, Peter Selwyn, you're right. Auckland is not a capital city. First major city that celebrates the New Year. Wellington is the capital of New Zealand. Thank you for reminding us, Peter Selwyn. Of course, we knew that, and welcome to 2002. Talk about Sydney. I always love the fireworks in Sydney. Been there for those as well.
Yes.
And you've seen those, Julia?
Yeah.
And the bridge, the Harbor Bridge in Sydney is always fantastic. Clark Chapin is saying hi and greetings. We got a lot of nice cards, and I'm just going to run one here because it's apropos a couple of the comments that he sent us. This is Andrew and Deborah. You know who that is?
Pindar.
Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin. Not Pindar, McIrvin. I always confuse those guys, our British foes. He sent this, Andrew did. He said, you know, as bad as 2021 was, it's appropriate perhaps that it ended in a whiskey tango foxtrot.
Oh, I wish I'd thought of that.
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then, of course, the first of the new year was last Saturday. And I've in this period, I've been put, you know, nobody has anything to do, right? I should have done a show. We should have put our bib and tucker on our black tie and done a show, don't you think?
Yes, but at the time it didn't seem like the right idea.
Well, and it was nice to have the time off, but I ran a few pictures on my Facebook page and on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page, and I, without comment, I think I finally did put a comment on this one because so many of you asked, you know, what is this shot? And there's one team upright in a obviously very breezy 30-plus Sydney Harbor, the Opera House in the backdrop, and that is Harry Price and his team racing in, I think, what was the fifth event of the New South Wales Ideen, the 18, the skiff series. Harry Price's talent was obvious before he came into the 18s this season as skipper for the long-term sponsor Rag and Famish. What's kind of a hotel name is that? The Rag and Famish Hotel.
I'm sure that's slang for something that we don't know.
Well, it's probably Cockney, rhyming slang, but Rag and Famish Hotel. But it's still hard not to be surprised by just how quickly the level of his and his team's ability has been highlighted under very difficult conditions. The Rag and Famish, turn my mic up here a bit, Julie. There we go. The Rag and Famish Hotel team's high standards already achieved were never more evident than during the recent race 5. This was the 5th race of the New South Wales 18-footer, the Skiff Championship, when the rookie 18s their team powered to victory while many experienced teams capsized or retired. I'll go back to that slide, but bravo Zulu to them. This just a nice shot, and his family have all been on the show. His dad and his mom, David Price, Pricey, Christiane Price, And his sister Olivia is an Olympic medalist from 2012. And of course, Harry Price, we know from the Governor's Cup, where he won once or twice, and he's a former world youth match racing champion and has been highly rated on the circuit, on the world match racing tour and circuit since. Highly ranked and rated. Bravo Zulu to Harry Price and his team, and keeping their boat upright and sailing past
Absolutely
everybody else. We told you about that. Now, this was a picture I put up on my Facebook page. This, you see the little white building here in the back, Julia?
Yep.
That is the Portage Yacht Club.
Is it?
Newport Beach Club back before 92, because the clubhouse was rebuilt then, that little white building on the left. And this is a Fozy, longtime friend, and he's been watching the show a lot, good friend of Clark Chapin's as well. And this, you all asked me, what kind of boat is this? This is an Interlake. We keep talking about the Interlake. It's an 18-foot, obviously sloop rig that's got a kite, a spinnaker. It was originally designed without a spinnaker by the same guy who designed the Star boat, Francis Swiceguth. And it was designed as a trainer for Lake Erie, for the Great Lakes, a Star-class trainer, and hence the big main and small jib, fairly low aspect ratio. It's glass and a modern boat. And there's, I don't know, something like 1,600 of them around, particularly the upper Midwest. This photo submitted by Joe Holtzman, longtime friend of the show, of his beloved 18-foot Interlake. He hasn't sailed in that class in quite a while, having moved to Colorado, but thanks, Joe, for that shot. Also, news over the last few days of that horrific fire at the Parliament House in the complex in Cape Town. Well, not in Cape Town, in South Africa. Where's the Parliament?
Canberra?
No, Canberra's Australia.
I mean, yeah.
What's the capital of? Is it in Cape Town, or is in? No, it's in. Come on, what's the other town? Capital of South Africa. Help me out here, guys. Help me out here. Yeah. And that is the South African Parliament building burning. And Ted Ryman, who of course is on here as a Fozy, has been, Pretoria. Thanks, Yarvahe.
Uh-huh.
And sad to see this. And then after it burned, and they put it out, then a day or so later, this just happened the last 4 or 5 days, and then it came back. And just today, before we went to air, the good news is that they have captured the crouton, they think.
Oh,
who set it on fire.
Arson.
It's arson. It was not some electrical fire, but apparently it was arson. And he had a bunch of, the guy, according to the New York Times, I just read an article just before we went there, the guy apparently had some explosives with him too, so I don't know what he was going to do, but we got some idiots in the world in New Year's. Speaking of idiots, this dog is the dog Rosie. Do you want to tell this story, Julia?
Yeah, well, there was a great, huge commotion outside of my window.
Right outside the Beach Street Yacht Club.
Right outside the window. And it sounded like a dogfight.
And
it went on. But it turns out that it was a dog napping.
Of a very expensive French bulldog.
Yes.
Owned by some neighbors of a dear friend of ours, right?
Yeah, right.
And this dog, Rosie, was taken right from out beneath the Beach Street Yacht Club, practically down at the corner of the streets, when some crouton drove by, and they must have taken an order to get one of these dogs, because it's not the first or the last time that there's been one of these French bulldogs, which apparently are very classy dogs and are often in the shows and so on. And it was stolen by a drive-by. Some croutons in a car came by, grabbed it, armed, were they?
Yeah.
And this was New Year's morning.
Yes.
And grabbed the one of two dogs that this lady was walking. She lives just around the corner.
Yeah.
Was walking, threw it in the car. The good news is they just, found the dog last night.
Yep.
She offered $10,000, right?
Paid $10,000.
She paid $10,000 as a reward. Well,
yes.
I hope they capture the croutons in the meantime. Rosie, the French bulldog. Big deal here at just outside the Beach Street Yacht Club.
It's not the first time that dog has been kidnapped, and I don't know
that style of dog.
Style of dog,
not the particular dog,
right? And why it's worth $10,000, I do not know, but it is because it's highly prized and rated. And
well, somebody on here who knows more about dogs than we. But while we're thanking everybody for sending in those pictures, I want to also thank Captain Jack, John Schaefer, who was with us on the show a week ago. He closed out the year. Captain Jack, thank you very much indeed. And we had John Sangmeister on before that. And Julia, as you know, and I talked to John this morning, he said we could say, thanks, Captain Jack and your Ministry of Sailing. And before I tell you about Sangmeister, I will tell you that what day is today. It's the International Day
of Braille.
Celebrating, exactly, well done, Julia, World Braille Day.
Read.
Celebrated every January 4th, fairly recent holiday, another one of these United Nations deals. It's International Day on the 4th of January, celebrates awareness of the importance of Braille as a means of communication, the full realization of human rights for blind and visually impaired people. The date for the event was chosen by the United Nations General Assembly via proclamation only 4 years ago now, and marks the birthday of Louis Braille. You know what country he was from? With a name like that?
It must have been France.
It was France.
France.
Creator of the writing system, the first World Braille Day was celebrated in 2019. Now, apropos that, do you suppose that Braille people are still reading books by, I'm sure they are, but, or are they doing, either listening, they're doing, what do you call that, book? Audiobooks, well done. They must be doing audiobooks because, I mean, you can push the button on your phone or computer now, it'll read everything.
Yeah.
Right?
It will. But I wouldn't be surprised that people still use Braille, especially people who grew up with it.
Well, we got to go to the comments because there's a lot of them. Graham Sweeney saying Braille is hard to learn. You got to feel it to know it. Well, yeah.
Indeed.
Isn't it World Spaghetti Day, too? I don't know, Fritz Mueller, that it's World Spaghetti Day. It was World something else. It was Croutonic, and I didn't run it. Hello from a cold day in Toledo, which is right on that South Shore Lake Erie, where the Interlake and the Starboat, Francis Swigert, we were talking about a minute ago, was originally from that area. The dog, Clark Chapin says, is only worth $10K because there's some folks who don't bat an eye at paying that much money for a dog. Don Logan is testing my new shoulder on our poodle puppy. Well, Don, I hope your shoulder's well. Don's a terrific, he is a drone flyer. He helps us with the Governor's Cup and other events, and he's right. In great demand at a drone flyer for sailing events. Go back, I'm going to go up above where Don Logan commented. Robin Noaz is saying the Frenchies are the most popular dog now, and the dog to walk around the Hamptons, Beverly Hills, and other places that I don't frequent.
I know.
It's some kind of a fancy dog. I mean, we've had other dog nappings here in San Francisco recently of that breed.
That's correct.
I don't know if it's bad enough to have a Rolex because you worry about walking around with a Rolex on your wrist, but to be out walking around with a dog that expensive. My last trip, Stingray is saying, included Bloemfontein. Oh, he was born in South Africa. Remember that. Should know the answer. Thanks, Ted Ryman. Ryman tells us, again, I'm up above these comments. I can only list the last 5 or 6 comments on this screen. South Africa has 3 capitals. Ted Ryman, of course, is a Fozy living in South Africa. Cape Town, in the city of Cape Town Metropolitan Municipality. Western Cape is the legislative capital and is where the country's parliament is found. Okay. Bloemfontein, I don't know how to pronounce that in Dutch or in Afrikaans. Bloemfontein in Mangwan, Metropolitan Municipality, Free State, is the judicial capital and home to the Supreme Court of Appeal. Sounds like Germany a little bit because, they spread things out. Their Supreme Court is down in Karlsruhe, and when everything else these days is in Berlin. Any other comments here, Julie? A lot of people's mental health has really been affected in the last, John Emmett, for sure.
No question.
There's some more croutons running around that probably than normal. Alan Long is saying Pretoria is the capital as well. Clark Chapin, I tell people that the reason that the Interlake mainsail looks like the wing of a B-17 is that they were both designed in the same year. Yeah, it was back in the 20s, I guess, or the 30s. Long time ago. Julie Ahrens, of course, is also from that. She's from Cleveland on Lake, or just near the lake, Lake Erie. Does the Golden, I think he meant, Stingray's asking, does the Golden Gate Bridge have a New Year's light show? Yes, but what happened this year? Not the Golden Gate Bridge, but San Francisco does. It's really...
Yeah, the Golden Gate Bridge doesn't really have one.
Only on an anniversary of the bridge.
Yeah.
But no, the answer, Stingray, is that San Francisco normally has a light show and a fireworks show off the city front with really the Bay Bridge in the background.
Yeah,
And
the
that
Bay
was
Bridge has a light show all the time because it
all year round.
all year round.
Yeah, they managed to raise money and keep that going because
Yeah,
it's really quite cool.
It is.
But the fireworks show was canceled this year, not for fog, but because of
Crowding.
COVID. They wanted
COVID.
to not have the crowd. Any other comments here, Julia, that you see? You've got that full list of comments. You can scroll all the way up now, right?
Yep.
Yarvahe, we got a lot of Fozy in hospital beds. Happy New Year from a hospital bed in Winchester, new starboard universal joint. Yarvahe.
Huh?
If they could only spell Harbor correctly, Clark J. I spelled it with an O-U-R. Anytime I'm referring to a bridge in New Zealand or Australia or the UK. Clark Chapin, greetings from Julie Aarons. Wellington is okay. Yeah, we covered that. Thanks to all of you. Welcome back. Graham Sweeney is back from the dead and rocking life from Yell in Shetland. Bring it on 2022. Happy New Year. All the Happy New Year
That's
greetings.
Good news. Yeah.
We told you what Shields Jody said at the top of the show. Haven't had a show all year. Gordon Smith is saying Happy New Year from Denmark and so on and so forth. And on this, the World Braille Day, Happy New Year again to all of you, sighted or not. And I have a starting line, as usual, segment to go into, and I'm going to kick it right off with a Bravo Zulu, because I think this was a really cool thing done by one of the international classes, specifically the 505. And you know why, Julie, it's called the 505?
No.
Because like the 470 is 4.7 meters long, and the 420 is the 4.2 meters long.
Right.
The 505 is 5.05 meters long, so 16 and a half feet, something like that. The class is always one of my favorite classes, a spectacular class, and they have done a cool thing just before Christmas. They had what was called the 12 Days of Christmas, 12 photos, fantastic photos. I've only got, I think, 3 of them here. One each day, starting on the 25th, not leading up to Christmas, but leading up to the new year, and asking people to vote for which one they like best, because they're putting together a book, the 505 book, and asking which one they thought should be on the cover. This was one of my favorites. I've sailed this class, not extensively, but enough to know what a fantastic boat the 50 is. And their class website is also really cool. The launch of the long-awaited 505 book, telling the story of the 505 class and how it has come to, okay, this is a little hype, but it's, it could be true, it has come to dominate the performance dinghy scene, will finally be launched at the World Championship in Cork. And of course, that class hasn't had Worlds for the last couple of years. Another favorite shot. 2022, the class says, is already shaping up to be a great year after being forced by COVID to cancel their the class's last 2 World Championships that were scheduled for Sweden and Bermuda. Good news is that the event will return to Cork in Southern Ireland next August. Cork's getting a lot of attention.
They are.
This will be the 3rd time that the Royal Cork Yacht Club will have hosted this prestigious event, with both the 64 and the 82 Worlds being regarded as classics held across a wide range of conditions, with the Royal Cork being acknowledged as the world's oldest yacht club, which I believe it is, over 300 years old. It is fitting that mid-championship next year, they will be hosting the launch of the long-awaited book telling the story of the 50 and how it has come to dominate the performance dinghy scene. Bravo Zulu to the bloody it's not bloody, it's just the 505 class. What a fantastic class that is. Canfield is saying it's a fantastic group of sailors. Bill, Happy New Year to you. Are you in Newport, Rhode Island, or you're probably down in the U.S. Virgin Islands where it's warm? Ralph Roberts, Happy New Year from Takapuna in Kiwi land and beautiful weather. Julia, I want to mention that Ralph Roberts, after the last show, sent an email. Maybe I copied you or you saw it. He wanted to get in touch with Captain Jack Schaefer, with John Schaefer, because he thought this whole Ministry of Sailing initiative was so cool, of getting sails and helping repurpose old sails for emergency use and FEMA, what we call FEMA in this country, but for where there have been disasters and using them for roofs and temporary shelters and so on.
So because they are so much more reliable than the blue plastic whatevers that they use.
Well, and of course, exactly. And if we get sailmakers all over the world saying, hey, we got to pile these things, when we got a problem, we'll make them useful to whoever the local authorities are. And Ralph said, I love that idea. I want to help promote it,
Mm-hmm.
not only here in New Zealand, but across the world. So he got in touch with us after that. Thank you, Ralph, who's one of the, if not the Dean of Yachting in New Zealand, he's certainly among the top very cool people. Robin Noaz, I think with the incredible price of bigger boats boxing many sailors out, I think the 5.0 Star and other great dinghy boats that have might been forgotten about. Yeah. And he's replying really to Clark Chapin, replying to Joe, who's replying to Jody. Yes, but the Etchells along with 29 feet LOA is 22 feet LWL. Yeah, okay. I crewed for Charlie McKee in his 5.0 Stingray saying we never once lost a race. Yeah, I remember crewing for the guy in the Tempest class, and he was so good and the boat was so well prepared. We never lost a race either. Had nothing to do with me driving the boat other than going in the direction he told me to go. Yeah, the 505 Graham Sweeney did the RC for five. Bill Canfield did the race committee for the 505 North Americans at Newport, Rhode Island. He does a lot of race committee work in Newport. So many contributors to our sport, our Fozy here on the show.
Yeah, that's just where the class for a while.
Well, and still are in many ways. It's they've got a problem now, a measurement problem. The boat's built in Australia, and I'm not going to go into that. Clark, you were out here. That's right. Clark was here. And we didn't get to see Clark, but I guess with the Omicron, I'm not sure that you want to spread that around. I would love to see Clark. Julie Aaron saying she learned to sail on Lake Erie. One of the, how many Great Lakes are there? There are 5 or 6?
It depends on who's counting. 5 is theoretically.
And what are they? Superior up north.
Yeah.
Michigan.
Huron.
On the left. Lake Huron on the northwest side of Michigan, the state of Michigan. Lake Erie down south, north of Ohio. And Ontario, which is kind of north of Ohio, and New York, and south of Ontario, and Toronto, Canada. Ontario, Canada. What's the 6th?
I don't know.
Many people consider Lake St. Clair, which is a wide spot in the Detroit River, really, the St. Clair River that connects Lake Huron to Lake Erie, considers that one of the Great Lakes, too. But it's not really. Clark Chapin, you can opine on that, or any of the others in the Great Lakes.
It's usually 5.
Okay, I guess that's Superior, yeah. Champlain is the 6th. No, Champlain is not a Great Lake. It's just a big, beautiful lake. The Shields fleet in Newport is still fairly strong. Shields a great boat, too. John Emmett checks in with his report from Lily's Flat. Have a look. And actually, listen carefully, because it's a really nice New Year's message from John.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and indeed all the Fozy, and it's another year. In fact, it's really strange to think it's 2022 when perhaps to a certain extent 2020 and 2021 didn't happen. Might be able to.
I'm freezing that on purpose because you were laughing.
I know.
Why were you laughing?
Well, does Julie know that he has that beard?
Does who know?
His
Lily?
Wife? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They probably having phone sex or something. I don't know. She's in China. I'm kidding, John. I'm kidding. But I almost didn't shave because I was inspired by John. I thought.
I know.
Okay, we continue.
Oh, John.
How do we get the video going, Julie, is the question.
Yes, I'm not back at Weymouth yet. I'm actually in Lily's study in Southampton, so trying to keep it all nice and clean as I do a flying visit. Now, the New Year is quite a strange time because a lot of people always set New Year's resolutions. Indeed, I think in January, if everybody who was a member of a gym turned up, then there wouldn't even be room for people to be in there standing. So we have this funny thing with New Year's resolutions, and I think the important thing is actually the way you live your life, rather than thinking suddenly everything's going to change on a strange date, like at midnight. I think resolutions are a good thing if you keep to them. So that's something which is very important to think when making your decision. And I think it's the big picture which is the important thing anyway, not whether you do something for a month. Seems a big trend now to have a stop smoking for a month, or stop drinking for a month, or stop eating meat for a month. But it is actually how you lead your life. And I think that the key thing for me is to try and be positive and to make a difference where and whenever you can. For sailing, that's about positive media. And I think we need to try and put in, whenever we have the opportunity, to put in promotion to our sport. And if things are less than ideal, maybe we don't want to highlight that, but to look at the silver linings in every cloud. And unfortunately, sometimes things, have to fail for improvements to be made in the long term. I think a lot will be made of the last couple of years about the pandemic, but there have been some good things which have come out of it, although maybe we don't actually see them at the moment. But for sailing, this is, my first love, despite getting dragged to a football match and all the rest of it. It just reaffirms how I want to spend my time. Positive publicity is the key, and I think we need to think about that on an individual level, on a group level, a club level, and a global level. So, yeah, my thoughts. Here's to an overwhelmingly positive 2022.
Well, another nice report.
Absolutely.
You have to be positive. I think we're very positive on here. We celebrate the sport. We try to with every show. And if somebody's croutonic, however, we'll call them out for their croutonicism. And it's not so much us calling out the croutons, it's the FOSI. What do you think?
Right.
And we're going to talk about that protest in a minute during the Rolex Sydney Hobart race and see what you think of that. But John, thanks again for your report and reports.
Yes, always
And
good.
look at all the comments about his beard.
I know.
Guess the state of the chin competition. Wow, Maura Stevens is saying, look at that beard. Looks like John hasn't shaved for a year, let alone a week or two. Julie Aaron's talking about the Great Lakes. Clark Chapin had a clever comment. Did you see that?
No.
As we Midwesterners say, he's saying Lake St. Clair is a pretty good lake. It's not a great lake, but it's a pretty good lake. Lake St. Clair is shallow and it's light air most of the year. And
I like the Stingray's comment that John looks like a native Herchinian.
What is that? Oh, Herchinian. Now, since you pronounce, I was trying to figure out what that meant. I thought it was some kind of a not a racial reference, but an ethnic or a cultural reference or something. John's got the Bond look, Robin Noaz is saying. Yet again, wise words from John Gordon Smith. Yes, indeed. Just resolve to have no more plastics on your boat. I think that's a good thing to resolve too, but nice that he brushed his teeth so nicely this time. New Year. What? He brush his teeth?
They look especially white.
Thanks, John. But yeah, do they?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably because he's not drinking as much coffee as you and I are. With our branded coffee mugs.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I do have the Pindar mug behind me, and the OK Dinghy mug, and the Pindar mug is over my shoulder there.
Yeah,
and we do still make good use of those. But I also thought, Julie, what was nice about John's report is that it's something that I try to do myself and try to remember to do at least. He's saying, I've never made New Year's resolutions. Have you made New Year's resolutions?
I have, but I gave them up a while ago.
Well, that's what he's saying. You make these resolutions, you give them. I try to make New Year's habits and then make them stick, right? Yeah. And I think that's what he's saying. And it's a good, he's a coach. He's coaching all of us with these reports in a certain respect and teaching. And I think he's right. We should make new habits and keep them and not just make resolutions that you've blown off.
Yeah.
Anyway, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, John Emmett, for that nice report. Now, he also sent along a link to this picture, which
that looks good.
That's snow kiting, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And that is Nora Ruskola, if I pronounce that right, who's Finnish, and she's a sailor. She's an Olympian. Wait, what? Snow kiting? Why haven't I done this before? She's, excuse me, my voice cracks. There she is. There's Nora. And John knows her because he's been coaching the part. One of his laser sailors is a Finn.
Mhm.
She's an Olympian, 49er FX helm for the team that sailed in Tokyo from Finland. And John said, since I sent this to you, I've seen a lot of the team doing it, including the Finnish team meteorologist. It must be a cool thing. Thanks, Coach John Emmett. And I love all this kiting. We'll see how it goes in France, in Marseille, in 2024 when we have kites in the Olympics. But I think they deserve their own federation, their own set of medals, their own venue, because they're more akin to surfing, obviously, than they are to sailing. But still, let's see how it goes. And I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I still think they deserve their own federation, including Olympic medals in the winter, right?
Right.
What does everyone else think? They're still talking about John. We make such mercilessly good fun of John. Well, we don't. It's polite. It's nice.
But we love him. Yeah.
Exactly. I hope everyone's resolution is to live each day like it's your last. Yeah, Robin's he's got a health issue. When you're facing death, you wake up to how much time you have wasted over nonsense. Live hard, love each day, and sail fast. Good advice, Robin. Thank you. John's looking like the victim to a hostage situation, Graham Sweeney is saying. Someone give him a makeover. It's from the movie Men in Black, Balchinian. I didn't know that. That's a comment up above where we are right now in the comments. Bill Canfield saying Rolex must be going crazy with the second bit of controversy in two major events back to back. Yeah, maybe. We'll get into all that in a second. Jody Shields would be interesting going up the lift.
Oh, yes. How to do that?
Well, I don't think that. I think they just reach back and forth on their kites, and they're just saying that's flat land. They're not kiting down the hill. I don't think.
Probably not.
Sorry about my grammar. Yeah. Okay. We have mercilessly good fun. Yeah, we do. We're lucky. Okay, that was a nice segment. As an addendum, an appendix, a nice one to John's report. Thanks, John, for sending that along. We're going to be talking a lot more about Australia, so I thought we would do this day in history at this relatively early stage in the show. Do you, Julia, know what happened on this day in 2020?
Oh. No.
Well, apropos John Emmett, remember when John was down coaching and maybe even racing in Melbourne? And we started getting all the reports of the smoke and the fire. We knew it was going on. It had been going on since September, October, during their summer. But it reminds me, it's about the last big thing we talked about in the world besides COVID. This was in early 2020. COVID we were starting to get it on our radar screen, and we were talking to Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, but really wasn't on our radar screen yet because this was on our radar screen.
Yeah.
Through that period. And it was horrific. Remember that?
I do.
The Australian bushfires all around the country. I mean, literally around the north and the southeast. And this is New Year's Eve from Lake, I hope I'm saying this right, Conjola in New South Wales. And this was just one of a bunch of fires in the early few days. And finally, on this day, on the 4th of January, the Prime Minister got serious. Australians have started the new year anxious and alarmed, the New York Times said a couple of years ago, with unprecedented bushfires engulfing parts of the country, causing thousands to flee the southeastern coast under blood-red skies. But the fires have been blazing around Australia since September, killing at least 24 people and gutting an area, I did not know this, an area larger than Denmark. I thought Gordon Smith would like that factoid. Maybe he knew that. Over 2,000 homes have been destroyed, and conditions are expected to worsen this weekend with months left to go in a fire season that seems to get longer every year. Julia, you know about the fires we've just had in our winter in Colorado, speaking of Bill Holtzman and
I've been thinking about the fires we had in the same years, though, in California.
But you didn't have 2,000 homes destroyed, did you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you did? Bloody hell. Well, these are bad, and these fires are bad. I'm still not convinced, and we'll get Mark Michelson on here to update us on global warming and climate change and so on. But this was a bad deal a couple of years ago, early 2000. And that spurred, on this day in history, the Australian PM, Scott Morrison, announced that the National Defence Forces would be deployed and employed to help fight the more than 200 fires amid criticism of his leadership. And is he still PM? I didn't check. Tell me down there, you guys.
Yeah, and there were a whole series of fires 2 years in a row, which is probably more than this.
Wait, where are you talking about? Australia or California or
California?
Well, in the whole Northwest here, Canada,
right?
Upper Northwest. Rains too much in Denmark, Gordon Smith says.
That's nice.
That much. New South Wales has 3 capitals too. Nora joined us as a commentator. Yeah, Ben Remacher, thank you. I saw the video. Ben saying that Nora, who we just featured in the Finnish 49er, the FX sailor, joined us as a commentator at the most recent 49er Worlds in Oman. I saw that. Thank you. Ben's given us a link. And Gary Roberts is saying that, yes, he's unfortunately still the PM. But having said that, I did like something he said the other day, which maybe was a good influence on President Biden, who said, it's about time with this COVID thing, we start living our lives as free humans and individuals, and the states need to deal with this, and we can't rely on the federal government to control this. We've got to start exercising individual rights and freedom. And he said something like that. I'm not sure I got that right. And over the holidays, our president, Joe Biden, said the same thing. This can't just be a federal issue. I'm paraphrasing, but it's really a state's issue. And 2 hours later, his staff said, you got to take that back. We've all got to take our own personal responsibility, as we did, Julia, before this thing really became a big issue. We said, well, we probably better go stop going to the yacht club and breathing on each other for a while. Yeah. And now I hear from, I think it was Ted Ryman. I didn't put it in the show because it came just before we went to air. Apparently there's a new variant. I sent a note to Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin. Apparently there's a new variant. And it's not a joke. It's apparently originated in Cameroon because there were travelers that came from Cameroon to the south of France. This news report's just in the last couple hours. Reuters and New York Times, and we always multiple source things, but there's 15 or 20 or 25 people, and it's spreading rapidly apparently in the south of France, where these travelers had just come from Cameroon. New variant, they've already done the sequencing, and it's not Omicron, apparently. And it's got 41, not 30, it's got 41 mutations. Okay, so we'll see how that all pans out. But
hold on.
Yeah, hold on, and we don't need any more fires, right?
No.
Right?
Not that we even needed one.
That was bad. And that is this day in history. Now let's carry on to Australia and to the Rolex Sydney Hobart race. We've got a nice video, a couple minutes long, and have a look.
It was a race that tested tenacity, tactics, and boat handling skills. It was a race that demanded physical endurance and mental resilience. Organised by the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia in collaboration with the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania, the 2021 Rolex Sydney Hobart was a true reminder of what makes this 628 nautical mile race one of the world's most renowned offshore challenges and indeed sporting contests. From the blistering start on Sydney Harbour, through the early taxing heavy weather conditions, to the more tactically exacting finishing stages, the race has provided an almost perfect examination of ocean racing ability. Blackjack was the first of the 88-boat fleet to cross the finish off of Hobart, following an exhilarating and captivating battle with Law Connect and SHK Scallywag that lasted most of the course. Then, half a day later, it was the turn of the 52-foot Ichiban to reach the line, and after an equally enthralling encounter with her closest rivals, Ichiban secured the overall win on corrected time.
It's amazing to be part of the history and the fabric of the Rolex Sydney to Hobart race with a back-to-back win. I mean, we're just so elated. Most races to Hobart do test the entire boat and the crew, but I think this year is probably more than ever. The wave conditions that we saw really first through the first 24 hours of the race, really creating big issues for the boats. And then you had that very complicated tactical situation for the rest of the race that really enabled, decision making to be absolutely critical to have a chance of winning the race. For about 2.5 days, we didn't see a boat at all during the whole race. And then we were match racing Celestial, which was great for both crews and made it a lot more enjoyable. I mean, everyone loves a race. That's why we're in there.
Okay, but of course, what that video didn't say was the controversy, the S fight that took place afterwards with the protests. But we'll get to that in just a sec. Again, a couple of slides, a couple new ones to celebrate, commemorate, give a Bravo Zulu shout out here to Blackjack, because they just were, it's an impressive job that they did. Mark Bradford, who's a longtime friend, Squark, as he's known, who skippers the boat. I do not know the owner, but we did talk about them last Tuesday's show. They completed the race. No big record here. 2 days, 12 hours, 37 minutes, 17 seconds, because they had it on the nose going down after they rounded the heads and going down the east coast of Australia. And we were watching the telecast, and everybody said, oh, it's really going to be bumpy, and oh, it's going to be lumpy. And the telecast said, yeah, the reason is because, of course, the big southerly, and they're beating into it. They're going upwind. And they said, and there's also a strong current coming from the south. And I said, no, can't be right. And it's the bump, the lump, just like out here in San Francisco Bay, when the current is going against the wind, and they had a strong northerly current going south against the southerly breeze, which causes the surface of the water to go against the wind-blown surface of the water, and you get these short, steep, choppy conditions. As I said, same out here in San Francisco Bay. When you have a westerly, you got the wind blowing in out of the west, and when the tide is coming into the bay, as all you sailors will know, it's relatively flat water. But if the wind is coming from the west and the tide is ebbing, it's going out toward the bridge and under the bridge, then it can be rough as hell, and it can all change in the matter of an hour, a little less. But anyway, Bravo Zulu to these guys, and to the, again, we said this last Tuesday, but to the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, terrific that they got this race off. Yeah, they had some attrition due to COVID. They had some attrition from what they lost, not quite half the fleet, but because boats breaking and turning around because of the super rough conditions. But they made it happen after the year off because of COVID, and congratulations to Mark and to Peter Harburg, the owner, who did not sail. And I thought, well, why didn't he sail? Why didn't he sail? I guess it's not because he's 80 or 79, however old. He's late 70s, or if not 80 by now. I think he was 78 when I ran that piece. There was a 3-year-old piece that I ran on Tuesday. So he must be 80, 81.
Yeah.
And whether it was because of the conditions, and he thought, but then they say no, because they knew it was going to get light in the latter stages of the race, and they thought they would keep the weight out of the boat. And he said, I'll meet you. I'll meet you in Hobart. Mm-hmm. So whether or not, whatever the case was, I'll talk to Mark at some point. I'll try to get Mark on the show. Squark. Terrific guy, one of the great guys in our sport. Congratulations to Blackjack, Bravo Zulu, to the entire crew.
Yes.
And they did have quite a race with Scallywag and with Lockeneck, especially down in the latter stages of the race, down the coast of Tasmania. Now, the big story, of course, was that Celestial won on corrected time, and then was protested by the race committee, as I'm sure you all know. And that took Celestial, they gave them a 40-minute penalty, which was apparently was the minimum penalty that they could give under the rules. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what I'm reading. And I haven't talked to any members of the jury, but I will. I know 3 of the members of the jury well, and we'll get to the bottom of that. But it was won by Ichiban, Matt Allen, who's another luminary in the sport, former president of Australian Sailing, Sail Australia, whatever it's called now, and Matt is senior series within World Sailing as well. And they, after the protests and all was said and done, Ichiban ended up winning overall on corrected. 3rd time in a row, a 3-peat. And Matt, that's for Ichiban, and Matt Allen himself has won it one other time, so it was actually his 4th win. Now, this protest flag was seen on the back end of Ichiban when they finished in Hobart. That was really a request for redress on their part, as it turned out, but the protest was by the race committee, who alleged, and I'm going to go into the details here in a second, alleged that Celestial had not maintained a radio watch as is required by the sailing instructions. And we'll tell you all about that in a second. I'm going to ask you if it was correct. That is the protest decision, whether it was correct or kroutonic. Matty Allen there in the middle. The overall win on time correction was eventually, I like time correction. Corrected time? Time correction. Was secured, eventually secured by Matt Allen's 52-foot Ichiban, previously winners in 17 and 19, and the Australian crew joined two other yachts within the legend of the race to achieve 3 victories and is the first since Freya in the 60s to lift the Tattersall Cup in back-to-back races. Remember, there was no race last year, so they won in 2019 and again in 2021. According to the winning owner, Matt Allen, quote, "It is amazing to be part of the history and fabric of the Rolex Sydney Hobart yacht race with 30," and then the quote ends with 31 races under his belt, the first back in 1980, age 17. Allen has, age 17, has plenty of experience to draw upon. He felt this edition had provided a full and extensive examination of seamanship. Quote, "Most races to Hobart do test the entire boat and crew, but I think this year's probably more than ever. The wave conditions we saw through the first 24 hours really caused big issues for the boats. Then to have that very complicated tactical situation for the rest of the race when the low pressure came up from the south, the high pressure and light air came up from the south, it really meant decision making was absolutely critical," unquote. So bravo Zulu to Mr. Allen, to Matt and his team for another win, their 3rd win on that boat. Yeah. But then, shall I go to comments first? Let me skip. So let me see if there's any non-protest comments. Clark Chapin. Yeah, there was a protest by Ichiban against Celestial in addition to the protest by the race committee. Thank you, Clark Chapin. "I hate protesting. It cuts into my social time," Clayton Embley is saying. "Not big names this edition." Yeah, well.
Alan Long said it wasn't a shit fit. It was a demonstration on why rules are there.
Yeah, okay. We're going to get, Alan Long said that.
Yeah.
It wasn't an S fight. It was, yeah, okay. Gordon Smith, "I was surprised at how much poor sail handling there was around the first couple of marks." Yeah, when we were doing the watch party at the start, indeed, Gordon Smith. Some other earlier comments?
There are wildfire comments.
Let me go to those. You want to read Paul Homchick's comment?
"Structures lost in California wildfires in 2017 were 12,000, and in 18 there were 23,000, and in 19 there were 20,000.
No,
11,000.
No, in 2019 there were 570, and then in 2020 there were 11,000.
Yeah.
And Joe Cool is saying, "Lucky I got a VIP call and did not comment on your comment in reference of kites should have their own category with surfing. We have a new design coming that might sway your thoughts. 22 is futuristic." Okay, well, thanks for that. And we shall look forward to that. And I am really looking forward to seeing how the kites work in Marseille. I think it will be interesting. Julie, swing yourself around the left a little bit, Julie. Look at your monitor. There you go. Always trying to keep our guests and Julia, so that when we do these split screen shots that we're both, because everybody wants to see your beautiful scarf. Where's that scarf from?
I have no idea. I was trying to remember that this morning.
I'm surprised that Jody hasn't commented on that, or Stingray already. What couple other comments?
Ted Ryman has given us all a connection to the coronavirus.
Yeah, to the new.
Yeah,
we'll do. Understand Ichiban means number one. Yes, that is true. Or so I read. Okay, non-protest comment. My youngest started opti sailing today. Matthias Collins down in Argentina. Great news. Congratulations. Ted Ryman replying to Peter Selwyn, and I thought that Ichiban meant Ichiban. Ryman. 2 wins and an asterisk. I'm sure it was not the way they wanted to win. Well, I'm sure that's true too, but nonetheless, a win's a win. The rules are the rules, and well, let's go into that now, okay? Shall we? We're going to go into the correct or kroutonic segment here because that is, if my slides are going to move here, that is the next segment. And as we promote this show at the top and also in the preview that we post, was this jury decision to penalize Celestial, was it correct or kroutonic? Now, I'm going to go through these and read them. It all started with a PLB, a personal locator beacon. This is via, by the way, this is via Live, Sail, Die. I appreciate their coverage of this, which I found to be about the best anywhere. And you know how we go through and look for all the best coverage and bring you what we hope and think is the best, not some croutonicism that might not be, after we curate, it might not be the best there is. It all started with the PLB, personal locator beacon, being accidentally activated on board Celestial during the 76th Rolex Sydney Hobart race, one of 13 that were accidentally activated during the race. So this wasn't a one-off deal. There were 13 such beacons. Now, this is the PLBs that people wear on their life jackets, on their PFDs, their personal flotation devices, or their harnesses or whatever. From there, the ball of string unraveled and resulted in both Ichiban and the race committee protesting Celestial and Ichiban seeking redress, failing to maintain a listening watch on VHF channel 16. A white flare and parachute flare later, and Celestial was issued with 2 time penalties, pushing them from first to second, resulting in Ichiban winning the Tattersall Cup again. This again is Live, Sail, Die. Long story short, all the other 12 boats that had PLBs accidentally go off answered their radio call, advising them that they were receiving on shore these PLB notices, beacons, and to confirm that all on board were okay. Celestial was the only boat that failed to answer the same call, which turned into multiple calls that went on unanswered for too long, something like 90 minutes. Search and rescue was on standby to deploy. The Shiza, Live, Sail, Die, says got real. So they never flew the airplane, but apparently they they were all set to go in case this boat was in some kind of, or not maybe the boat, but maybe a person, the individual. So they did try to reach them by VHF, and then finally did apparently reach them by sat phone. So that's what is a good synopsis, I think, of the report. Now, here is the protests versus Celestial, and these were the facts found. For the purpose of SI 31.4, the jury interpret listening to be the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. Celestial was able to communicate by handheld VHF with Ichiban once the red flare was sighted, and was therefore within VHF range of Ichiban during the incident. Either the equipment or procedures on board Celestial resulted in her failing to maintain a continuous listening watch. That's what the sailing instructions require. Maintain a continuous listening watch on VHF 16 as required by SI Sailing Instruction 31.4. Ichiban's redress, at the time of deploying the flares, it was reasonable for Ichiban to assume, the jury, these are facts found, it was reasonable for Ichiban to assume that Celestial needed help. It is possible that Ichiban's finishing position in the race was made significantly worse through no fault of her own by giving help in compliance with racing rules of sailing, Racing Rule 1, to someone else other than herself or her crew, and the rules that apply. Okay, then I'm going to carry on here. Here is the decision. A discretionary penalty of 40 minutes in lieu of disqualification is to be added to Celestial's elapsed time as authorized by SI Sailing Instruction 21.1. In determining the penalty, the following matters were considered. A, the specific penalties for other rule breaches within the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Racing Sailing Instructions, the World Sailing Disciplinary Penalty Guide, which is, however, designed for use in multi-race.
Discretionary.
What? Discretionary. Thank you. Discretionary Penalty Guide. Thank you, Julie. Which is, however, designed for use in a multi-race event. C, the appropriate penalty for a breach of a rule with potentially serious safety consequences. D, the mitigating factor that the breach was accidental. And E, the aggravating factor that the breach inconvenienced AMSA, the Australian Marine Safety Authority, whatever AMSA stands for, the race committee, and other competitors. What's AMSA stand for? Did I get that right? So redress is given to Ichiban. Ichiban's elapsed time is to be adjusted by deducting all of 3 minutes, which, that sounded, given that they did fart around, but it wasn't for very long, so they did get a few minutes. Celestial was penalized, as we just told you, and this was there by taking 40 minutes off their time. This is Celestial's response via Facebook. After, and by the way, as you probably all know, Celestial went back and asked for a reopening of the hearing, which they have a right to do under the rules. The jury, by the way, this was a good jury. This is
David Tillett. Yeah.
Your friend David Tillett,
Yeah.
whom you know well, who stayed here at the Beach Street Yacht
Yep.
Club, right?
Mhm.
And a longtime Australian judge, friend of Julius, friend of mine. I've served on I don't know how many juries with him, and also presented in front of him during the America's Cup. But also John Doerr from the UK, highly respected international judge, long time, former chairman of America's Cup juries and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. And Russell Green, another longtime friend who, of course, is the rules advisor for Emirates Team New Zealand. He came across the Tasman to help on this jury as well from New Zealand. So this was what Celestial said after all was said and done, after the request for reopening was denied, and properly so. Celestial raced as well as this boat can be raced. We posted the lowest corrected time, but we were protested for a rule infringement. The rule is technical. We were found to not comply with SI 31.4, not keeping a listening watch for a 90-minute period of the race. The rule is technical. It did not give Celestial an advantage nor disadvantage another yacht. However, it is a matter of safety. Celestial does keep a listening watch at all times and complies with the sailing instructions fully. Well, apparently the jury didn't think so. We do not know how the radio calls were not heard. As far as we knew, the equipment was functioning properly. The penalty of 40 minutes, Celestial thinks, of time deducted took us from first place overall, winners of the Tattersall Cup, to second.
Well, it's aggravating, but understandable.
Okay, so now let's see what everybody else thinks, and then we'll ask you at the end to tell you whether the jury's decision was correct or kroutonic. I'm up above where we are here. Yeah, Australian Maritime Safety Authority, Peter Selwyn, thank you. I'm going to start up higher here in these comments where you can't see. Stingray saying Ichiban should have been awarded the win for a new win category, first on kroutonic time. Rules are followed, so yes. Ken Saban says, I think he thinks this decision was correct. Robin Noaz is saying Celestial didn't follow the sailing instructions. If we start to allow people to not follow the SIs in the regatta as a joke, I bet next year's race this won't be an issue. Yeah, they may adjust the rules too a bit, Robin. Let's see. Alan Long says it's correct. Ted Ryman says it's kroutonic. Peter Selwyn says it's completely correct. No question. You either have a rule and abide it, or you don't bother with the rules. 2 wins and an asterisk. Mark Reed is saying, I'm sure it's not the way they wanted to win. I'm sure Mark's right about that. And then some more recent comments. Did I say Gordon Smith says it's correct, particularly as the weather conditions would suggest that listening out for the needs of fellow competitors was necessary. John Emmett, many lives may have been saved on the Titanic if all boats had been on a listening watch 24 hours a day. Fair enough, John. Mark Curtis had a competitor altered course to ready for rendering assistance, and there was no emergency, just ignoring radio. It would have been a grounds for DSQ, correct, for the situation. So he thinks it was correct. Phil Walker is saying, bravo Zulu to the race committee. If we do not look after the safety of our yachts and competitors, then the authorities who know nothing about our sport will do so or close us down. And he's referring to the Nularg incident in 1996. Yeah, that's a good point. Ken Saban is saying, replying to Emmett, that John, the closest boat was a German freighter they weren't going to call. Talking about the Titanic. Replying to John Emmett, they only had one communication officer who was asleep at the time. Titanic had two, so as to have a 24-hour watch. Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Thanks, Peter Selwyn. Reading this, Gordon Smith says, it seems like 40 minutes was quite a mild penalty. Responding via Facebook is kroutonic Mark. Well, to be fair, I also posted, I didn't run it in the show because the guy went on and on and on. The owner skipper of Celestial, the owner of Celestial, who came down, he was obviously very sad. But to his credit, he went in front of Nick.
Yeah.
Nick, remind me her last name. Sorry, I can't remember her last name. The Australian lady who is jumping up in the air and the adventures of a sailing girl.
Yes.
And we've had her on the show. She's a Posey as well. And he did, right at the foot of the steps where the jury room's upstairs at the yacht club in Hobart. And he gave a long kind of rambling talk. I put that up on my Facebook page.
Oh, I didn't
Nick
see
Douglas.
That. Nick Douglas,
Came to me.
Yeah.
And it's on my Facebook page, and I think I put it on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page. But if you want to go back to that, go have a look, because it was emotional, it was heartfelt, and he said, I accept the jury's decision. Well, that was before they asked for a reopening. And they were in the bar all night, one hears. I had people telling me, sending me notes. They're still here in the bar at 5 a.m. Other comments. We told you Gordon Smith said that he thought 40 minutes was a mild penalty. I think that the jury's decision was correct. Alistair Murray is saying still above where we are in the comments there on the screen. A lot of comments, well over 100. We got that we get a notification now saying you're over 100 comments, probably closer to 200. Clark Chapin, the quality of the jury is well reflected in the detail and reasoning of their written decision. Clark, who's also a senior serious judge and race officer. Great synopsis, still correct, Alan Long is saying. Rick Hayes. The rendered decision was correct. The rules related to comms are required for safety purposes. The owners and crew on offshore distant racing boats need to know the rules, take them seriously, and comply. Celestial did not comply with the communications requirements and are lucky the penalty was not greater. So Rick is agreeing up there where Gordon Smith said it could be longer. Jody Shields, a horrible way to win and lose, a horrible and a worse way to lose. Fair enough. Bill Wingrove with the backdrop of the 79, still up above the comments where we are. With the backdrop of Fastnet 79 and Sydney Hobart 98, along with the nearly having to deploy assets, it was the correct call, Bill Wingrove is saying. Jamie Hutchison agrees it was correct. Alan Long, a teaching moment. Paul Homchick, if you were really monitoring the radio, its being quiet would be a clue that something was not right. Good point. Since Itchy Bond, Bill Wingrove is saying, was asked to contact Celestial by the RC, they may have been in a position of having to file a protest. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I think they just were trying to seek redress and didn't quite know what to do. Baton Rouge, didn't Wild Oats a few years back only get penalized 30 minutes on their port starboard situation with Comanche? I think it was 45, wasn't it? Or was it an hour? I think on this, when we did our mock protest hearing, Clark Chapin will remember, with Clark and Dick Anderson, I think they came up with a you-all were the Fosey were the jury. Clark and Dick Anderson argued the case, and then you found Comanche guilt, or not Comanche, but Wild Oats guilty, and then you penalized them only 30 minutes. I think the jury came back and penalized them an hour.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
Right from memory. I mean, so Baton Rouge, I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure Clark Chapin remembered. Nick Douglas, thanks, Mark Reed. Applying to Gordon Smith, should have been the amount of time they were incommunicado. Alan Long is saying they should have penalized them for 90 minutes because they were incommunicado for that long. Is checking in on your competitor's radio signal a race tactic? Well, I think that's a rules reference from Mark. Well, most of them, Julie, seem to think the penalty was correct.
Yeah.
Only one or two think it was kroutonic. Talking with, I did, let me see if I've gotten anything back from Andrew McIrvin, who, of course, as you all know, is the senior series Secretary General of the International Maxi Association. Chick has sent me a musical related text. Let me see if I've got something back from here. Let me see. Boy, I got a lot of comments here just before we go to air. If I'm going to put your comments on the air, I really got to have them, you know, an hour before to be safe. It's a pretty strong timeline, isn't it? Surely the hardest cup to win. Okay, we're talking about 2024 and the America's Cup. Henry Reese Henri is also talking about this the Paris Dakar race. So we're not talking about that. Okay. I don't see anything back yet from Andrew McIrvin because I asked him and he said he had some views, but he was flying to someplace in Spain. I mean, you know, Andrew's right down there. Okay, so I won't worry about that. Andrew, if you're watching, give us a comment. Otherwise, we'll get his opinion. But I did talk to John Sangmeister this morning. Mm. And first of all, he says thank you for all the concern that he's gotten on his Facebook page because he and his family drove up to Colorado to see his mother, John's mother, and the kid. He had 5 kids in the car with him, 3 of his kids, I think, and 2 of their friends. And the kids somehow came down with Omicron. And they very quickly realized they were all not correct. And they got back in the car and drove all the way nonstop back to Long Beach, to California. Oh. Because they didn't want to infect his mother.
17 hours.
A long way. They didn't get back to 1 a.m. You know, they left early in the morning, and yeah. And John by then said it was he was feeling terrible. He said, you know, again, he wasn't sure if he was going to die or if he wanted to die. He really felt bad by the time he got back. But the good news is, he says, and I asked him if he'd tape a little segment sometime in the future after he gets through all this. And I digress from the Sydney Hobart, but I don't want to forget it. And he took all of the antivirals that his doctor had prescribed, and he had them standing by in case any of them got sick. And he tells me that he took Zithromax, ivermectin, prednisone, another one, and hydroxychloroquine, and a couple of puffers of those antiviral puffers, something, and Flonase. And the joke is that after you take one of those is a horse dewormer, ivermectin, right? I mean, it's used for a lot of different things. It's been used in humans forever and ever, but it's, you know, the joke has been, well, and he didn't know whether he was going to race in the next Kentucky Derby or he was going to piss like a racehorse. But the truth is, he said within 12 to 18 hours, he felt heaps better. He's still not over it. A couple of days later, I talked to him, as I said this morning, but I digress with all that. John says, thank you very much for the kind comments. And I'm sure they're all going to get better. He was double vaxxed, by the way. The kids were not vaxxed. His wife's also got it now, but she's okay. John said he had the same problem remember when OEX sank in the Transpac a couple years ago. And he said he thinks that in the offshore world, they're letting people, the crews, the teams, get away with super thin conduits running up the mast, with super thin coax cable going up to the antenna to save weight. And these, as a result, the signal's attenuated going off the antenna, or the cable's fraying and getting broken, or whatever's happening. But when you can communicate with a VHF handheld on the deck, but you can't use your main VHF to communicate, there's something wrong. John says he's had the same problem. He's talked to many owners who also have the same problem, and he thinks the offshore world needs to make a rule that says you got to have a coax of a minimum size and diameter and whatever the tube that's going up the rig that coax is in, if there's something. I don't know what the requirements are. So offshore world, he's talked to Stan Honey, he's talked to another couple guys in the offshore world on World Sailings Committee and the U.S. committees. So that may be an issue, and I think they need to fix the rules. But I think you're all right. All of you who said, hey, you know, the rules are the rules, and next year I'll bet you everybody's listening carefully for the situation. Let's go back to the comments. LED masthead lights also affect VHF, Graham Sweeney's saying. Thoughts and prayers for John and his family. Thanks, Mark Reed. Yeah, he's okay, but it's interesting. He said that it really was, and he's late 50s. If you're going to have communications rules, J. Frederick Bland is saying, you'd better follow them. Sounds like sea lawyer stuff, but it was a valid protest. And yeah, you know, one of the things that bothered me, Julia, is that when they did the request for reopening, I think maybe even in the original protest, they went in and tried to say the protest flag wasn't displayed properly on Ichiban or soon enough. They weren't notified soon enough. you're dealing with a senior serious jury who don't like that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Then they allege that the chairman of the jury, in their request for reopening, one hears, and I'm hearing this, alleged that the chairman of the jury, our friend David Tillett,
Yeah.
had once had dinner with Matt Allen, the owner of Ichiban. Therefore, he was biased. He was prejudiced. He had a conflict of interest. Excuse me.
David Tillett.
Tillett. They probably had dinner lots of times.
Yeah.
I mean, Tillett and I have had dinner lots of times, but in a protest, if I was on front, they would go in and allege.
He's such a straight arrow.
He is a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Tillett is.
Mm.
So that doesn't sit well with a jury like this. If you're going to go into a jury, let me just give you a longtime international judge, sat on two Olympic juries, chaired juries at World Championships, yada yada yada. To see nothing of being a rules advisor in the America's Cup since 1980 for various teams and events and yada yada. Don't belittle the jury. If you've got a case, go in and make that case. Stick to the relevant facts. Be polite, and don't go in there with a lot of stuff about procedural stuff unless it is really completely, and Clark Chapin will, I'm sure, back me up, unless it's completely serious stuff where you were prejudiced because somebody didn't tell you out on the race course they were going to protest, therefore you didn't have time to do a 720. That's a horse of a different color, no pun intended, with respect to John Sangmeister. COVID has gone ballistic down here. I have gone from 3 months ago not even knowing anyone personally in Australia who had contracted it, this is Alistair Murray, to now having 2 daughters, 2 sons-in-law, a brother, and my daughter all catching it. Well, as McIrvin told us,
yep,
we're probably all going to get it.
Mm.
And we got a bunch of friends now, not only Sangmeister, but a bunch of other people, including my youngest brother who's got long haul.
Yeah.
Steve Atkins has apparently come good. But the problem is this breakthrough COVID.
Yeah.
Right? We keep bouncing around with COVID. Let's stay off COVID for a minute. But I don't want to lose these cool comments. Alistair Murray's comment. Mark Curtis is back and forth. How does one test for that and quantify the effect? Okay, good. He's talking to Graham Sweeney about the LED question. I'll let you all go back and read the comments. Phil Walker says, methinks Mr. Andrew is in Lanzarote for the start of the RORC Transatlantic. Yes, he was on a plane headed there when we texted this morning. Robin Noah is saying the same thing. John Emmett is saying you should ask Andrew about IHU. No, it is not a variant of concern at the moment. Okay, there is a new, as I said at the top of the show, apparently there's a new variant. John Sangmeister is on. Okay, John, so there's a lot of people wishing you best. He said he was better in 4 hours, not 12 to 18, after he took the therapeutics. Good to hear. Replying to John Sangmeister, give us a list of the treatments again, please. Okay, Mark? John, if you would do that down in the comments. You read them off to me this morning. I jotted them down. John Emmett, my Christmas was canceled as the host and his wife both tested positive just before. And of course, testing is a major issue. Clark Chapin. Tillett did the proper thing by recusing himself from the conflict of interest portion of the reopening. Yes, he did. I heard that myself. He didn't share that. Oh, he didn't share the balance of that hearing. Well, he wouldn't have had to. I mean, it's just, excuse me. Replying to Graham Sweeney, contact Virgil at ICOM UK. That's about the masthead strobe light. Masthead, LED masthead lights affecting VHF. Okay, Virgil at ICOM UK. Thanks. Maybe you can put a link there. Ken Saban is saying have friends with COVID-3. In fact, no vaccinations. What? COVID-3, in fact, no vaccinations. Yeah, well, we got lots of breakthrough. And it's also now clear, Julia, that you can get COVID. It seems like for the last 2 years, we keep trying to do sailing news. And then we inevitably, because everybody's, this is so concerning, and it's affecting every aspect of our sport, like it affected Rolex Sydney Hobart.
The guy who invented the way for the speedy tests for COVID at home was on TV this morning and made a big point of saying that the ones that looks the deepest look at of the tests, I've forgotten the name of it, is too deep because the quickie.
Okay. Yeah, the quickie is good, but the PCR test is so good that you keep testing positive for a long time afterwards. Is that what he said?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but it means you're not infectious. If
Well, they're not even sure about that.
well,
how
he
long
is.
you're
He
infected.
he
was?
invented it.
Okay. Well, let's. Yeah, Robin Noaz. We'll see if the Olympics go off. So apropos all of that, I was saying to Julia just before the show that Dick Pound up in Canada has gone public here in an interview yesterday in the U.S. saying he thinks that the Olympics in Beijing will go ahead. And Beijing, the Winter Olympics, he thinks they'll go ahead, but he's the first one to utter publicly saying, if it gets worse, I can see that they could get called off, although I don't see that at the moment. And Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr., or the third, whatever he is, the late, great Juan Antonio Samaranch, who was president, his kid, who may be a future president of the IOC, who's the head of the program commission or the coordination commission for Beijing, says, no, it's going to go ahead. I'm going to try to get Dick Pound on the show.
Yes, he was really good before.
You remember he was on the show back in before Tokyo. He was the first one within the IOC, and he is the doyen. He's the senior serious guy, and he said, I don't think Tokyo is going to happen. I think if this gets worse or stays bad, this thing could get postponed. With Beijing, he was saying yesterday, if it does have to get called off, it won't get postponed. It will be called off because there just isn't enough time to do it again and yada, yada. Okay, back to comments, Julia. Replying to Brent Graham Sweeney, see if the Olympics, Robin Noaz is saying will go off. The same thing happened to me as a lateral flow test, John Emmett. As the lateral flow tests used in the UK are made in China seems a bit ironic. To be fair, the lateral flow tests tell you whether you're likely to be infectious, which is the more thing. Wait, they will go on. The world is scared of China. Will do well. We'll see, Robin. I don't know about that. We had a lovely New Year's Eve party in Alameda, but every adult had a quick test earlier that day. 5 days later, there are no reported cases. Okay, Clark, Alameda's over in the east side of the bay. My younger, more vigorous triple vax brother spent his second night in hospital for Omicron, but is recovering strongly. Stingray saying, wow. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Will hopefully be released this afternoon. Seems like it is spreading like wildfire. John Emmett, China will be super controlled. We had this non-story with the Japanese. Isn't it interesting, John, that Japan seems not to be having a big problem with Omicron?
At least reported.
Well, I think Japan's pretty good about reporting.
Yeah.
China will be super controlled. We had, that's what John is saying. John Sangmeister, thanks for the kind messages. There he's listing Zithromax, ivermectin. And John, you said these were all prescribed by your doctor some months ago so that you actually had them on hand. Prednisone, hydroxychloroquine, albuterol, and Flonase. Z-Pak and ivermectin made a real and dramatic improvement within 4 hours. I gave my wife some of mine, and she too improved quickly. I recognize that we are but 2 samples, and the joke is I now walk around showing strangers that I can count to 10 with my right hoof. I tried to give John a better line or two than that because I don't think that I said, you ought to say that you're starting to sound, you're talking like Mr. Ed. Remember the horse?
Right.
But he said only you and Julia and 1 or 2 other people will know that reference. He's probably right. A horse is a horse, of course. There was a talking horse on
right.
60s or 70s television show. China has cities of 12 million people in lockdown. Yeah, Stingray's saying. Following 0-case lockdown policies. Incredible. Yeah, I don't know how you're going to do that. New Zealand didn't succeed. In the UK, and the other thing is that I'm hearing this morning that this thing is like measles. It's transmissible by 7 or 8 or 9 times the transmissibility of the previous versions of COVID. And there are people who across the halls in quarantine hotels who had apparently no contact. Well, you got to worry about that. And they said there was no ventilation issue between the rooms, but somebody across the hall in a room, somebody across the hall got it. And that both in Hong Kong and that also in New Zealand. I don't know.
There's so much stuff floating around.
Yeah, well, it'll be time if this other
anecdotally.
Well, if this other thing, if this other variant comes comes to the fore. We'll have to get Andrew back on here. In the UK, where was that comment? I just lost it. The very vulnerable people, John Emmett, have the antivirals on hand, so if they test positive on lat flow, then they can start to take them immediately. Graham Sweeney, could COVID aside, the U.S. just budgeted for $800 billion in the military budget. I find that more worrying than COVID. Remember, Clark Chapin is saying the plural of anecdote is not data. Clark the engineer. Replying to Stingray, Robin Noaz is saying that's because in China, if you break curfew, you are making Nikes for the next 15 years. Jeff Ogle, vitamin D and C supplements are important. I credit them with my very mild case of COVID. Well, Andrew McIrvin has been, Dr. Mister has been telling us about, and also John Campbell, Dr. John Campbell, and I keep it here on the desk so that not only to remind all of you, but also so that I am reminded when I come into the studio every morning to take it, so it's right here on set. But apparently, not only is vitamin C important, and I heard this again from on one of the programs this morning, very senior, serious guy, neurologist, said also zinc. Be sure you're taking zinc. Again, we're not prescribing, we're not doctors, we don't even play one here on the webcast, but my vitamin D level's around 50 nanograms per millimeter, John Emmett says. Okay, well, he's had it tested. Coach Emmett. Okay, anything else before we move ahead, Julia or Fozy, on COVID, now that we've hashed that through? Thanks, John Sangmeister, for those comments and that information. And Julia, St. Francis is still closed down. And I think it's going to be closed down beyond the 12th, even whenever the plan to reopen was on the 12th, I think it was.
We don't know that yet.
Well, we don't. Hopefully it'll be open. And the good news, again, is that in South Africa, where this Omicron was first discovered, I guess,
identified
and sequenced and identified, it's peaked quickly, and now it's on the downswing. And there's been very few hospitalizations. In fact, here in the U.S., I'm told, I saw a stat this morning that even though the cases are going up, and we have 1 million cases yesterday?
Yes.
1 million cases in the U.S., but the death rates have actually gone down. The hospitalizations are stable, and death rates have actually gone down. Who knows? I recall that Delta had an RO of about 2, and Omicron is about 3 to 5. I think it's more than that, but smallpox has an RO. Yeah, okay. Clark Chapin's got some technical. It's seriously transmissible, obviously. Stella Artois has been working for me so long as it gets delivered and left up at the front door. Stingray saying,
well done.
You better shave, John, or that stubble will block the sun. Yeah, well, it might also get Omicron stuck in it, huh? Maybe you get Omicron stuck in his beard. COVID will be over by Christmas. Graham Sweeney's. Yeah, Ted Ryman's confirming life is almost back to normal there in South Africa.
That's really good news.
That is good news. Shall we carry on here, Julia? There's a non-report here from the Cup. Despite what you're seeing, it's like people they got to fill the airwaves with something, and we're not going to do it because there's really no news to report. There is apparently a technical delegation that's going up to Cork to look in Cork at that venue, but at the end of the day, it's still in the hands of the gentleman on the right and the gentleman on the left and the third gentleman in the middle, Grant Dalton on the right, Mark Dunphy on the left, and Jim Farmer. One continues to hear, Julia, that there is another rich lister, like Mr. Dunphy, who may be willing to come in and help further incentivize Team New Zealand with more money for not only the event, but for the defense, further incentivize Team New Zealand to stay home, say in Auckland. There are the press reports about the technical delegation now up in Cork, and Cork saying, oh yeah, there's a little more interest now that we may be able to do this now that the village has been moved from up in the north down to the city front. Okay. And as we broke the news on this show a long time ago, we told you that Malaga in Spain, forget about Valencia, that Malaga in Spain was in the bidding process now, and that is now confirmed by press reports all over. Magnus Wheatley has reported that, and various, I mean, he may have gotten that from us, but he would also, he's very careful, he would have fact-checked that, source-checked that as well. And now all the other New Zealand people are quoting us and Magnus and saying, oh yeah, it's going to be Malaga in Spain. Jeddah seems to have quieted down, but Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, there may be Oman even, maybe in the hunt. I still think, mark my New Year's 2022 words, I still think it's going to be in Auckland.
I hope so.
I know you hope so. Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm kroutonic?
I need another inch of time.
Okay. Ye of little faith. You have no faith in your host.
I have total faith.
I
in
have
my-
total faith in my co-host. Julia Veda-Kent, who is standing by. If you're just joining us, we're at an hour and a half. God, the time flies.
We had nothing to talk about, so it's only an hour and a half.
We were live again here at the Beach Street Yacht Club for our first show of the year. I'm your host, Tom Ehman. Of course, Julia Veda-Kent. There's the one I wanted to click on. But Dunphy, Farmer, and Dalton, and there's still this guy in the hunt, too. This is the lawyer, Sir Edmund Thomas. I think they call him Ted Thomas, the prominent retired judge, who says if it, and remember, he's saying not only if it goes to Jeddah, and that's Jim Farmer saying if it goes to Jeddah, he's going to take Team New Zealand and the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron to court. And these people are, these are serious people.
Yeah.
And this other guy, this Judge Thomas, Edmund Thomas, Sir Edmund Thomas, he says that if they run it any place other than in New Zealand, Auckland, he's going to take them to court.
Yeah.
I fear, and I think this is going to slow down the process. And as several of you have said in text in the last couple of days, it's 2022.
Yeah.
They're talking about having an event in 2024. That's what has been agreed between the Challenger record, the Royal Yacht Squadron's Ineos Britannia, and the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron. 2024. That's 2 years from now. And they're going to build facilities, and they're going to get pre-regattas going. They're going to get boats. I don't see it's going to happen.
Any place but Auckland.
I think it can, exactly. I think it can happen in Auckland.
Yeah.
No problem in 2024.
Yeah.
You can't even do it in Valencia with those facilities. Those facilities are, they're in play and so on. What are the Fozzies saying here? Agreed, Auckland will happen, Ted Ryman is saying. Hi, John Mangino. Thank you for your comment, for joining the show. Who was the technical team that checked out Cork last week? The Electrician Brothers, Chuckles and Marty Cork. Not going to Jeddah. You both look marvelous, Peter Bretschker saying. Thank you, Commodore Bretschker down in Orange County. At my favorite yacht club, Beach Street Yacht Club. That's my favorite yacht club. Balboa Yacht Club. Peter Bretschker, I just am pleased to report that I was just re-upped as an honorary member. I got the letter from the board yesterday. Thank you for that. Peter probably had something to do with that as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Staff Commodore
That's
there,
great.
an influential person that he is. Ted Ryman replying to Stingray, now it was Mick and Patty. Checking out Cork. Clayton Embley saying, I think and want the sailors to get paid, but this is what happens when a company and not a club runs the show. I agree that it will be in Auckland. The fallout on against the New Zealand team will be too great. Funny, they're making the New York Yacht Club of the 80s look good. Ed Worley saying Auckland or bust. Well, I don't know. Mr. Dalton seems hell-bent to run it someplace other than Auckland, even if he has a lot of money forthcoming. There's something going on that seems to me, Julia, to indicate that he really wants to run it outside of Auckland, New Zealand.
It'd help us if we knew what that was.
Well, he may have promised Emirates Airlines that the next one would not be in New Zealand. It would be somewhere in Europe or the Middle East. He may have promised them that. And so it may be not a future sponsor that he's trying to curry favor with. It may have been a previous one or two. So I don't know. There's something going on that doesn't meet the eye. And as you know, follow the money. Peter Bretschker, you deserve it. It's Kari's third year as a director, so it was your wife. Okay, you give Kari a big hug and a kiss for us. And probably Andy Rose, despite my bad influence down there, Julia at Balboa Yacht Club with Governor's Cup and so on. They'd still let me in as an honorary member. I appreciate it.
Yes.
If they choose something other than Auckland, then no AC in 2024. Mark it down, Bill Wingrove is saying. Julie Ahrens, who thinks Dalton is right and it should not be in Auckland, she's saying, quit speculating. Well, that's half the fun here, Julie. You tell us. Julie, you tell us where you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
you're quite sure it's not going to be in Auckland, or you don't want it to be in Auckland because you're a big fan of Dalt's. But tell us where you think it's going to be. Is Dalton truly the final authority? Well, Alan, no, the squadron is the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, but he seems to have a deal with them that they seem to be, I don't know if
Beholden.
right, beholden to him. Stingray, it must surely be the TC deal Dalton is after, the TC deal. That is driving his relentless offshore push.
What's a TC
I wonder
deal?
what he means. Stingray, tell us what you mean by the TC deal. Interesting that the new 40-footers, are they? The small boats that are being, are they 45s? What are the small boats? Are being built in China. China. And that asked me, one of you sent that to me, and I asked you, well, if they're being built in China, where are they going to build these hydrogen chase boats? Are they going to build those in China? Huh? Maybe they've got a venue in China. Anyway, between these lawsuits and COVID, I think the reason they have to run it in 2024, forget about this guy, Edmund Thomas, but I think the reason they have to run it in 2024, they got to deal with Ineos Britannia, who said, we will run it in 2024. And as I've said any number of times on this show, these other teams have a burn rate of 1 million somethings a month, probably, at least Ineos Britannia does. So if they're burning 1 million a month, they don't want this thing delayed beyond 2024, especially if they got a deal in writing, which I'm sure they do.
Yes.
In the pre-protocol. In the protocol,
yeah,
we'll see when the protocol comes out. Follow the money. Ed Worley's saying, a TV deal, Stingray means. It surely must be the TV deal Dalton is after. That is driving it. I don't know if that TV deal is, and by the way, bravo Zulu to them for getting awards, multiple awards, I think, by now, for that television production.
Yes, and as the best of the year.
Well, and a lot of those same guys were involved in the Olympics, and the Olympic sailing television telecast also was award-winning. I'm going to get one of those guys on here with Talk TV, big picture, long term.
Yes, let's do that.
And give them the well-deserved Bravo Zulu, both for the Olympics and for the America's Cup telecast. Julie's saying, I want Auckland as much as anyone, so does Dalton. I have no more info than anybody else. Okay, John is saying, John Mangino, China water too polluted to run hydro testing. Stingray, Malaga is funny. It is where A Fistful of Dollars was filmed. Do you know the film Fistful of Dollars?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Clint Eastwood.
Well, see, you're much more culturally aware than I.
No, not really.
It is time for Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Have we made contact with this guy?
No.
We got to find him and see if he'll come on the show.
Yes, absolutely.
It would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for this, but as we ring out the old year and ring in the new, well, would you look at that? An old lang syne. I don't remember who sent that.
That's lovely.
Huh? Isn't that good?
It is.
Now, this was sent by Pindar. He said, just got my COVID test result, and the result is go to the pub, whether you're positive or negative. We tried to get tests down here as everybody will tell you, in the U.S., they're out. And the federal government, the Biden administration, apparently turned down a big deal to make tests available.
Yeah.
And they didn't do the deal for one reason or another. And they're being highly criticized left, right, and center. Now, this one, Julia, get your finger ready.
Uh-oh.
You got your finger ready?
Yep.
I'll leave you on here. With the shortage of lateral flow tests, this is from Andrew Pindar, I want you to know.
Oh.
With the shortage of of lateral flow tests available, the UK government are going to introduce a new 1-minute self-diagnostic process. John Sangmeister, are you listening? You put one finger in your mouth and then one up your behind. After 60 seconds, swap fingers if you can't smell or taste the difference.
It's quick.
Isolate.
Oh.
Huh? That's thanks to Pindar.
It's medically correct.
Well, no, because apparently with this COVID, the smell and taste thing, so that's why this is funny.
Yeah.
Apparently the smell and taste thing is not as one of the top, what's the word I want, symptoms. I had to run that. Tequila. Now this was important. Helping, I think this is actually from McIrvin. Tequila, helping people wake up in strangers' beds since 1521.
Oh.
Julia, has that happened to you since you've been off wine and off?
No, I seem to be missing out. No, I better hurry up.
1521. This also from McIrvin. He must have had a lot of time on his hands over the holidays. And from this day forth, you will be known as Sir Lewis Hamilton II, because he came in second. That's cruel. But thanks. I'm getting a lot of Formula One memes and cartoons since many of you are Formula One fans. You all know I had a few years, 6 years in that game, and loved it. Learned a lot as well. So. Lewis II. Finally, always be yourself unless this probably applies to other sports as well, but every time I see this, I think of Emmett. Always be yourself unless you can be a sailor, then always be a sailor. Right?
Right.
I think that's fair. That's nice.
We
had a bit of shortage of tests in the UK. I was lucky. I ordered some from the farmhouse, or to the farmhouse, to his mother's place, some to Weymouth and some to Southampton, because I didn't know where I was going to be. Mangino says, laugh. Oh, Worley's, they're laughing. Okay. Smith, we have presumably at that joke, we have a bag of quick tests here for the children's return to school. Good. Bland is laughing. Emmett, Omicron has no smell and taste loss symptom. I'm not sure that's 100% true, John, but I guess that has been reported, that it's largely true. At least I think it is. Prince Charles trying out his 5-iron. I wonder what Prince Andrew's going to be trying out after the guilty verdict here of what's her name in the States. That brings us, fortunately, to the finish line before we play any more bad jokes. I had some others, Julie, believe it or not.
I believe it.
I had some others that I cut out that were just too croutonic. They were fun. They were funny, though. And if I were more juvenile, I would have run them. In the finish line, I've really only got one story. And do you know this yacht? 1973. This is a cat ketch called Cascade. It was designed and owned by Jerry Milgram, a MIT professor and sailor. This was from Sports Illustrated on March 12, 1973, during the SORC. It's back, but not in quite the same force it used to be. Sailing up a squall. This report in Sports Illustrated, our big sports Bible, Bro Bible. It's still around, probably not.
Magazine.
I call it a Bro Bible. That's a term of art, and it's still around, and it's maybe not in its glory as it was in the day when magazines were so big, but it's still around. And when sailing gets mentioned in Sports Illustrated, it was a big deal. They used to cover the cup quite extensively as well. Sailing up a squall, ugly little Cascade, Infuria, the subhead, infuriated ocean racing purists on the Southern Circuit, the SORC, with her strange, gawky rig and low handicap. But what smarted most was her smashing victory in the Miami to Nassau Classic. And it was not just in that race. She won a bunch of other races, too. At 34, Jerry Milgram is an associate professor of ocean engineering at MIT. He got the inspiration for Cascade's so-called cat ketch rig, cat for catboat, the familiar gibless craft whose mast is far forward, ketch for the two-mast arrangement, not from the university's computers, as one might expect, but from a number of sources, including a 19th century Block Island fishing boat.
Oh, that's interesting.
Establishment sailors who were beginning to call her Milgram's baby, as in Rosemary's Baby, there's a movie, that one I remember, did not see the yellow eyes and cloven hooves, John Sangmeister, in the boat's ugliness so much as in the fact that she did not carry such standard appurtenances. I obviously didn't practice read this. Appurtenances as Genoa jibs and spinnaker poles, although she does fly a spinnaker of sorts. Worse yet, Cascade was so maddeningly swift that before a race, Skipper Milgram would merely lounge around on deck. I remember this I wasn't there, but from reports on deck as the fleet started, keeping his craft out of the pre-start melee. Then he would put her in gear and coolly march past boat after boat.
How lovely.
From Sports Illustrated, that terrific report. And I'm sad to report today that Jerry Milgram has died. He just died just before Christmas. Jerome H. Milgram, age 83, passed away December 20th at his home in Winchester, Massachusetts, with his family by his side. Jerry was the William I. Koch Professor of Marine Technology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, where he taught since 1970. Jerry was a member of the National Academy of Engineers and recipient of the 2017 Gibbs Brothers Medal, which was awarded for outstanding contributions in the field of naval architecture and marine engineering. Jerry contributed to the development of many technologies associated with oceans: boat design, oil spill cleanup, tug and tow technology, underwater submersibles, and even holograms that detected plankton. He often worked closely with the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. Jerry was the design director and chief computer modeler for America Cubed, which won the America's Cup in '92 by using a much more scientific approach to the design of racing yachts. And there's a photo of Professor Milgram outside the San Diego Yacht Club in '92 with the old mug. Professor Jerry Milgram of the States here, 1938 to 2021. May he rest in peace. Okay, that about does it for us. Julia, did you have a comment on Jerry Milgram?
I was just wondering, that was such a radical, different design, and it doesn't seem to have been followed through on. I wonder why.
I'll tell you why. It was a rules beater, and they were changing the rules even during the SORC, trying to penalize it more under a clause in the what was then the IOR, International Offshore Rule, that allowed them to re-rate a boat that seemed to be, way out of kilter with. And he did take several rating. In fact, he ultimately didn't win the SORC, but it was because he had a disastrous race, not because of the changes to his rating. But immediately after that 73 SORC, the rule was changed to heavily penalize catches and some other features of that boat. So that was a good question, and that's why he didn't win the SORC. He was a very interesting character. He was a real character. I didn't know him well, but I knew him well enough, and he will be missed. Unusual bow for a racer of that era. Yes, Stingray. That race win was over Windward Passage, Equation, Palawan, American Eagle, Wild. Yeah, this was at the height of the SRC. Thank you for that, Peter Retschker. Todd Johnson, these are comments up above saying, I did a race against Cascade in '76, the race no one remembers. Maddening experience. What else? Is there a submersible that is not underwater? Yeah, that was a bit of that was redundancy there in that comment. Are there any above? Okay. For a boat of that era, many Transpac boats have moved that direction lately. Really? Cat catches? Interestingly, Todd Johnson saying, Jerry insisted on having a chart table in Cascade on which a full-size chart could be laid out without folding. Interesting. Well, as I say, may he rest in peace, and a great character and a great influence in our sport for many, many years. Julia, your witness.
Yes. Start the new year out right by following, and sharing.
Exactly. Comments are welcome too, as you all know, even in replay. I hope this new commenting system is working okay. If you're watching on my Facebook page, and maybe Peter Retschker, that's where you are, you're not seeing all the comments. You're only seeing the comments on on my Facebook page. The best way to watch this is to watch it on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page, where you see all the comments, or on the YouTube channel, where you see all the comments as well from both sources. A couple other comments here. Let's see. I believe the original rule made mizzen mast sail area unmeasured. John Mooney is saying, John, what it was that it measured headsail area, and the boat didn't have a headsail per se. It had two mainsails, had a main and a mizzen, so that had no headsail, and it got a huge rating advantage originally from memory. I think I had that right. Bill Wingrove, the Ranger 37 Muñequita, there was a tilde over that end. Muñequita won overall in 73, the last production boat ever to win. Thanks, Bill Wingrove, who's down in Florida, Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
The Free States are calling Florida now.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry I forgot to wish you all a Happy New Year. Thanks, Ken Saban in Toledo, Ohio. John Emmett, see you Friday. John looks fearfully at his razor. Are you gonna cut your beard, John? You gonna shave it off? Oh, I should have waited one more day.
No.
No. Gordon Smith, thank you. Top show as always. Thanks, Phil Walker. Great to have the show back for 2022. Pindar's saying, just joining. Have I missed much? Has someone found Sugar, the racehorse? Right?
Oh.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, Sangmeister was on earlier, and we were just doing the closing slides here. Click that bell while we're live if you want to get the notification, because I am now, we got this new system that you get notifications. And by the way, tell us in the comments if this new system, we're told anecdotally that no one has hit all that stuff we saw before, some of you had with buffering and problems with watching the show. Apparently that's gone away with the new system. Tell us if that's not true.
And I'll just add that the only place you're really going to see all the comments is on the YouTube.
No, well, true. Because if anybody comments on YouTube, you're right, you won't see them on the Facebook, because Facebook doesn't pick up the YouTube comments. But the bulk of the comments, since most everybody is commenting on Sailing Illustrated's Facebook page, that's where you'll see them. And the comments are wonderful.
Yes.
The FOSI are wonderful.
Absolutely. It's half the joy.
Graham Sweeney, John, wait for a strong breeze. Cheers, everyone. Thanks, Stingray. No buffering on this broadcast. Thanks, Ed Worley. Oh, Ryman. The horse was served up at McDonald's. I hope they're not doing that. Get notified. Click the bell icon while we are live. Support us on Patreon. And we just, one of you on here, Stingray, I'll say it was you. Thank you, Stingray, for your significant contribution here at the start of the new year. Really, really appreciate it. But others of you can do the same, one time or monthly, or just send us a check. Hell, Julie, they could send us a bottle of tequila like some of our FOSI do,
Yes.
right? Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Thank you all for your support. I'm going to put a list together of all the patrons, and we're going to start running them here at the bottom of the show. So if you are a patron, a Patreon member or contributor, or even if you just sent us a check, I've got a list of everybody. I'm going to put a list of all of you on here, and if you don't want to be listed, let me know.
Well, you have to do it the opposite way. You have to tell everybody.
I know, but if I miss somebody,
yeah.
If I just don't forget to make the communique, or they don't see my communique, then I just say I'm going to make that list, and we're going to put you all up here proudly, because we're appreciative very much of your support, and I think you should be proud of supporting us. I think. Love being a FOSI. Alan Long is saying Happy New Year. No more Ryman. Ted, I hope things sort out down there now that you've apparently captured the crouton who burned your Parliament House down in South Africa. Julia?
Yes. Here's to a positive.
We should have had another bottle of champagne. We didn't do champagne New Year's Eve.
No.
We just watched the ball go down in New York. And I came back downstairs and was in bed asleep, I think, at 10 o'clock. It was 10:30. You thought I was boring, as usual.
Yes.
I am boring. Thank you, everybody. We hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope to see you on Friday. We'll be back on Friday with our twice-a-week show. And in the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun.